Hi, ladies. So I wanted to jump on here real quick and just talk a little bit about financial wellness. Financial wellness is one of the 5 stars that a lot of times we don't really focus on and we don't talk about. Financial wellness would be around having a healthy financial status, meaning you're not living paycheck to paycheck. And one of the biggest things that can help a person not live paycheck to paycheck is to have 6 months of bills set aside in savings. So even before you get to a point of investing, even before you get to a point of doing certain things with your money, it's important to have savings set aside for emergency funds. The rule of thumb is to typically have 3 to 6 months set aside of bills in an emergency fund. And that could be a money market or it could just be simply a savings account. But it's important to have that. Think about if you had 6 months of bills set aside and you got into a situation maybe with a job, maybe you lost your job and you wanted to get a new job. You wouldn't have to rush. You wouldn't have to be so urgent and just taking any old kind of job because you have to pay bills. You would have that emergency fund to kind of live off of to find a steady job that fits maybe the desires that you want. Emergency funds, if you have things that come up unexpectedly, that might pull away from your day-to-day, resources, emergency funds also come in handy. The whole point of just setting aside money in an emergency fund is to set aside and not think about it, not look at it, not touch it until you're in a situation where you desperately need it, an emergency situation. So if you set aside $25 a week and you put this in this account and you don't touch it, it will build out. It will definitely increase over a period of time, but you have to put it in there and then kind of walk away from the money that's there. So let's calculate it. 25 a week would be $100 a month. $100 a month times 12 would be $1,200 after the end of the year. Now, yes, it might take time to build up depending on what your bills are, but other ways to get that amount of money to increase. So again, you get tax return. You might say, okay, I'm going to dump a portion of money in this emergency fund. You actually might get a gift for your birthday or for Christmas, and you might say, okay, I'm going to dump a certain amount of money in that fund. So outside of the $25 a week, there are other ways to get money in there. But just think about it. Think if you started this several years ago. Think as if maybe from the first time when you got your job, you've had this philosophy where you've always been putting money aside. That money would build up. The way that it sounds small in the beginning is because it's just the beginning. You're starting out, so it looks small. But think about 10 years later. 10 years later, so, $1,200. And let's say you haven't had to touch the money. Okay, so take me for example. Let's say I started this philosophy when I started my job 10 years ago. So $1,200 after 1 year. Again, $25 every week. That then is $100 for the month. After 12 months, that's $1,200. Now let's say after 10 years in my current situation, now I have $12,000. I haven't been laid off. I haven't had a situation where I had to touch that money. So now I have $12,000 just set aside for emergency funds. So now $12,000 in my bank account set aside for emergency. Haven't had to touch it. It's just sitting there. So when things come up, things that are emergency situations, I need to do some repairs to the house. Okay, even if I have to touch that money, I'm still putting $25 aside every week. Oh, if I actually now get laid off at my job, okay, I have enough money to say, okay, I don't have to jump out there and just take any job. I can say I have enough money to cover my bills for a period of time so that I can steadily find the kind of job that I want to go to. That takes stress off of a person. That kind of gives you that freedom to say, okay, I'm not stressed. I don't have to worry about it. How am I going to put food on the table? How am I going to take care of my children? How am I going to pay my car note? How am I going to live? It gives you kind of some reassurance. And it's something that you worked and set aside to do. So now when those situations come up, you're not stressed. You don't have anxiety. You don't have to run to family. You don't have to run to friends. You don't have to say, okay, how am I going to do this? You can rest assured within yourself that, you know what, I have this covered. You can say, okay, I am going to pull from this emergency fund to cover myself for the necessary months for me to get on my feet. That is powerful. That is extremely powerful. And so when we talk about not living paycheck to paycheck, I'm talking about things like that. So let's think about it. We're in June. Here's an example. Let's say everybody who's listening to my voice, somehow in the country, systems went down, There was some, I don't know, situation that prevented us from being able to get our paychecks next month. So now going into July, you know you're not going to get a paycheck at all. You will get that money back in August, but for the whole month of July, you won't get a paycheck. So this paycheck that you got in June is the last source of income that you're getting. How many people would still be able to pay their mortgage, pay their rent? How many people would still be able to pay their car note? How many people would still be able to buy groceries for the household, pay for anything that the children need, medical stuff? How many people would still be able to put gas in their vehicles if they planned a trip, still to be able to go on that trip? How many people would really comfortably be able to live that lifestyle that they've continuously lived in the month of July without getting an income? That's what I'm talking about. And that's what setting money aside for an emergency fund helps relieve stress for in the unexpected. Something like that. We don't expect something like that, the system to go down. It's just, it hasn't happened. Or, a lot of times when things happen, we don't plan for it. Again, this is planning for it. And it's small, and it's something that will be able to give you that reassurance when something happens, if something happens. And if nothing happens, you just have this savings that's set aside, for you to continuously grow. So it could start off again, like I said, $25 a week. It can be something as small as $25 a month. But the whole thing is to start. The important thing is to start somewhere. If you start somewhere, you're building, you're growing, and that is that financial security and wellness that so many of us desperately, desperately need. Ladies, I hope that this was helpful. And I thank you for taking this time out to listen to my message. Again, I just want to reiterate, we must start somewhere in order to improve and grow. So maybe you can't start today, but definitely maybe you can start next month in July. The goal is to start. So I want to thank you for taking time out to listen to my message. I hope that it was helpful, and I look forward to us growing together. Take care.